And welcome back to the show again. Thank you so very much for being with us in this new year. I am so excited in these first weeks, these first months of the new year, to make sure that we know the skills that we need to know the all of the important pieces of our toolbox that will help us be great entrepreneurs. And to that end, I am very excited to welcome my first guest today. He is a entrepreneur, but he is also very involved in customer engagement. Nothing could be more important to us entrepreneurs. His name is Shil Niyogi. He has written a new book called Lean Customer Engagement. You, of course, can find it over on that Amazon place. He went to undergraduate at one of the most prestigious universities in Delhi, India, got an engineering degree. After that, he moved to the United States and got his MBA at UCLA, one of the top 10 schools probably in the country. He was very active there in the student-run organizations and all of the extracurricular things that you can do. After that, he's had an amazing career with some of the top companies that you can think of, including Arthur Andersen, my favorite company in the world, of course, Walt Disney, and Wipro, one of the top Indian consulting firms. But now he is out on his own as an independent management consultant, and we are very excited to welcome you to the show. Shil, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks, Jim, for inviting me to the show.
Did you have a good New Year? Everything work out well for you?
Absolutely. It was wonderful for me.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on the book. It just came out last October. The title again is Lean Customer Engagement. Is lean here referring to the lean methodology of startups? Tell me about the title of the book and where we're going.
So again, I have come across situations where companies normally go ahead and spend quite a bit on a product or on a service that they think can provide value to customers or can be liked by customers. But then the whole idea of lean customer engagement is to understand customers first, understand what they value, and build that customer base kind of like an engaging zone, and we can talk about that later. And then involve that customer base in developing that product or the service or something. So in other words, without unnecessarily wasting energy and resources in unnecessary marketing and sales activities or product development activities, that you do only so much that is needed and get the most important value from the get-go.
All right. Does that mean that it should be cheaper?
Yeah, it shouldn't have any kind of waste at all, especially around marketing activities. Yeah.
Okay, well, that sounds encouraging. I love that. Anything that's cheaper is better off for us. I know in the book you talk about your 4E framework, the four pieces of the E framework. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So what I tried to put together was four different types of interactions. Essentially, these are things that have been done by entrepreneurs, but they haven't necessarily been structured in the way I have structured. So as Peter Drucker had said that every successful business is all about how you innovate and how you market. So what I have done is put the four E's as four different types of interactions where you can engage, where you can bring in customers or prospects into that engaging zone. So the first one is education, and we have done education in the past as entrepreneurs. So this one is more focused on enabling the entrepreneur with information about customers, the basic information. So think of building a swimming pool, right? So I always give that swimming pool analogy. So you are kind of getting the dimensions of the swimming pool. That's education. You kind of learn from the customer. You talk to the customer, what do they want? And you get the dimensions. The second E is enabling, brings in the whole idea of how can I make products or services available or accessible to our customers at reasonable prices. So that's very important. So value, and then how can we get those values across, so that those are easier things to use. So enable is kind of like, you. So back to our swimming pool analogy. So you get the dimensions in educate. In enable, you actually build the swimming pool, right? And the third aspect, the third E, is effect. So often what we do is we in this whole agile world these days, we kind of get into iterations. We don't exactly know when to stop. So effect is where you are looking at getting a maximum value point. That's the other MVP that I talk about, where you get all the maximum value points first, and then look at the bells and whistles, right? So that's what effect is all about, where you understand, you assess whether you're still providing value to the customer. And kind of like, you're basically building the swimming pool and then pulling all your customers into the swimming pool. That's effect or effectuate. And the fourth E is engage. So now that you have the customers in the swimming pool, you keep them in the swimming pool. You keep them entertained in the pool. So that they become customers to your next product, your product 2.0 or service 2.0. So this whole idea of the 4E framework is about educating, enabling, effecting the change, and then engaging the customer further so that he can go through these 4Es again for your next product.
All right. Well, that's great information for the entrepreneur. It sounds like something we really need to know. How do we keep them in the swimming pool then? You brought that up as the engagement piece. Sounds like the most important. How do I keep my customers in the swimming pool? Do I add some concrete to the water and keep them in there with, I just turn it into concrete. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's good. Offer some new services like, give them sodas while they're in the swimming pool, or maybe pizzas. I don't know whether that's a good idea, but the idea is to keep building that new product. Kind of now that they are in the swimming pool, it's easier to understand what they want, and then provide them what they want. And that's an easier customer. You don't have to necessarily battle for that customer or that prospect anymore, because they are already engaged in the pool. So all you have to do is now build a better product by listening to them.
All right. Well, the analogy works for me, Shil. The number one thing I love is to have a drink at the swim up bar in the swimming pool. So I like the idea of the drink in the swimming pool. That's about the only thing that would keep me there. I absolutely love that analogy. It totally works for me. But that sounds expensive. So how do we make it congruent with the belief that this can be lean? Where does the lean come in? It sounds like all of the add-ons are going to add on more cost.
Just the swimming pool was an analogy. So imagine you build a product, without necessarily having a customer at all. Nobody has seen it. You just thought maybe this is something that the customers would like because I like it. And I'm kind of like an artist, right? You just write it and then you think that it will sell. However, when we take that approach, it's much more expensive because you are building on something that you have no idea there's going to be any customers for. It's basically, I'm talking about kind of getting the customers first before even you embark into building like a super product. So that's what I have stressed, all throughout. That get a customer first, or get someone to like your product. I know that there are, issues of IP protection, but then again, have your IP suitably protected first, and then try to get customers first of all, like your idea or like your product, or like at least the concept, right? The concept is the new minimum viable product these days. You kind of sell the concept and then see how people react to it, and accordingly you get your supporting functions around it, and then build a business.
All right. Well, I'm beginning to understand the framework better now. Let's go back to some of the earlier pieces. The first E, educate. So, who are you educating? Are you educating the customers that the pool exists, or are you educating yourself about what your customers are going to want? Help me understand the education phase.
I wanted to get the main components from marketing and sales functions. And education is not only, I mean, traditionally, education in marketing is all about telling customers what you have or what you're going to come up with. So what I have proposed, or what I have, through my experience, I have researched, and what I have written in the book is all about bidirectional education, which means that you are telling the customers that, okay, you know what, I have this product that can, or this service that can help you grow from one to two in terms of revenues. And you can use it with XYZ function, right? So, so that kind of education helps customers also give an input or feedback. You are telling about the concept that you have, and the customer either likes it and says, you know, this is actually excellent. It'll help me in ABC work, uh, and they support the whole idea, or they can actually give you a feedback that, you know, I would have loved it if it had three green lights on the top rather than one red light, which is also good, right? Because you are building a product for a customer who has to buy that product. So that's education. That's bidirectional. You kind of bring forth your ideas and get your customers' feedback, educate yourself, get all the data, and then try to build a product around those data points that you collect.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. And I like the fact that it's bi directional. I think that that's really important and will be beneficial as you're in this phase. Talk to me about the next phase, the enable phase. How does this relate to the customer?
So now that you have some of the data points from Educate, you build on that. So let's say the three green lights that a customer suggested, you have to build on your product and remove the red light. So you take that idea, you take a few other ideas, you see how much the cost will be to put all that. Is it a cost that's kind of really high cost, or is it something that you can still do with if you eliminate a few other functions? And then you also look into the customers, right? Who is the most profitable segment you have? I mean, you cannot please everyone. You have to select the customer segment that is likely to buy your product first. And then obviously the other, secondary and tertiary ones who may like the product, who are not necessarily buying the product for the value you're providing, but maybe another value that may not be the main value that you're providing. You are bringing the product out with more data. You understand now the customer segments. You understand exactly what the values are. And then you iteratively build products or services and then provide it at a convenient price, and then obviously with promotion, and then you work the distribution aspects, the logistics, and any kind of advertising or brand building that you want to do around it. So this whole enable phase talks about these different ideas to enable the product and enable the customer so that he or she buys the product, which actually adds value that you determine during the educate phase.
All right. I like that. Won't that, though, create tons of data? Aren't we going to get into a data problem here? Too much
Exactly.
data?
Absolutely. And then that's where I've talked about enablers. Enablers in a company are kind of going to be data scientists who are going to look into the data, use machine learning or use some other form of data analytics and identify, who the most profitable clusters are or segments are. And then also they will look into the value, their value points, and then they will also look at the costs. So there's definitely a lot of work around identifying the best pricing, the costs associated with the pricing, also what the competitors are doing. So that kind of analysis also, as well as understanding customer or consumer behavior.
All right. What do we do with the extra data? I mean, do we disregard some of the data that we accumulate then?
We will get a lot of data, and we can keep it. We can store it for future product releases, or we can also use it to build other products that are not necessarily these products. Again, data is helpful, but then customer priorities also change. Advent of new technologies, new products, other market competition. So I think that's something that we'll have to think through before we throw out any data, because any data that we collect is going to be useful for future products as well as future releases of the same product.
All right. And finally, let's move on to phase three, the effectuate phase. Tell me about this.
You had asked me a question about how cheap the whole idea is, and that's exactly what the effectors do, where they are kind of always assessing whether they are providing enough value to the customers. And while doing that, are they spending more or less? Because the idea is not to just provide everything, provide the sun and the moon to the customer. The idea is to provide value that they need at a reasonable cost, because you don't necessarily want to get out of your own comfort zone. So that's why effectuation is all about managing burn rates, managing the number of iterations in that whole agile mode, identifying where we should just stop, because that's the maximum value point for both the consumers or customers or prospects, as well as for us. So that's where the effect plays, because they have to determine whether we are still rendering value or not, and how do we get all these customers into buying the product with that value point. So effectuation is all about managing rates and the value, as well as help customers make a decision within that value point.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. And then finally, we come back to where we started with the engage phase. Is there anything about that I didn't ask that you should tell us? Did we get that when we talked about it at the beginning?
Yeah. So just to add to that, engage is, again, you kind of, it's a cycle, right? So you educate, you enable, you effect, you keep providing the value that you want the customers to have, and then engage is identifying if they needed anything. So now you have the customers, you kind of ask them as to what would please them further, what would help them get more satisfied, and then again start that whole cycle of education, enable, effect, engage. So engage is kind of like farming or account management that we talk about. It's more like keeping your customers happy with your services, and then identifying other areas where you can grow your account or your business. So it's essentially an important part of the 4E framework. And it also is very interesting, because when projected them on our 4 phases of product lifecycle, it kind of matches up well, because when we are in an introduction phase of the PLC, that's where educators help us, because they can help us identify more users of the product, what they want. And then when the product goes into from the introduction to a more growth pattern, that's where our enablers help in identifying where the growth, where the segments are, where the geographies are, where they can sell the product. And after that, there's maturity of the product. And that's where effectors help, because now we have limited resources and we have to identify where the dollars have to be spent most effectively. And finally, we have the decline phase in the PLC, where our engagers can give us that version 2.0 of that earlier product. And so that kind of chimes very well with the PLC, how it can kind of change the graph of the typical product life cycle to be a little more plateaued rather than the bell curve that we have always seen.
All right. The name of the book is Lean Customer Engagement. Shil, great stuff. How can we find out more about you? Get a copy of the book. Follow you on social media, please.
Leancustomerengagement.com. You can find information about the product, about some videos, as well as other information about the book. And then there are several bookstores, that are selling my book. So you can always download that. You can find the ebook on Amazon as well, which is actually a very nice way, and it's again very inexpensive as well. Just to let you know. So, and again, it's being sold worldwide, so you can find a copy from the British Amazon or Indian Amazon. I think the price may be slightly different, so you can definitely gain advantage of that.
All right. Yeah. Make sure you check out Flipkart. We have a ton of Indian listeners, Shil. So all of my friends in India go to Flipkart, and the rest of us will get it on Amazon. Shil, I hope you have a fantastic 2017. Thank you for being with us today, and we will be right back.
Thank you, Jim.